Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, June 4th, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I am joined on today's episode by Slash Film weekend editor Brad Oman
Hey, that's me.
and writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
All right, guys, let's jump right in today, dive into the deep end, because our first story involves a seafaring movie, well, what will soon become a franchise, Master and Commander,
Wow,
Far Side
Ben,
of the World.
You've taken my role as the punster of the group.
Aisha, you will always be the punster of Slash Film. There's no amount of punning I could possibly do will be able to put me in the same league as you. So, speaking of leagues... Another
the punster and commander.
Yeah, there we go. All right, guys. So we're having fun. It's Friday. Okay, so there's a new Master and Commander movie in the works. The first film came out in 2003. It's called Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. It starred Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany and was directed by Peter Weir. And it is a terrific movie. It's so much fun. I wrote about it in a quarantine stream column last year, and I think we talked about it on the podcast around that time. So people may be familiar with our just sort of general love for this movie. And now Deadline reports today that 20th Century Studios is developing a new Master and Commander movie. The downside is that it sounds like it's not going to star Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany, who were so great in that first movie. But instead, this is going to be a prequel that focuses on younger versions of their characters. So Patrick O'Brien is the author of a series of novels involving the character Captain Jack Aubrey, who Russell Crowe played in the first movie. I think there are 20 books in that novel series. And this new movie, which is being written by Patrick Ness, is supposed to be based on the first book in this series and will basically be about the first time that this Captain Jack Aubrey character is given his first command, and as he becomes friends for the first time with the naval surgeon Stephen Maturin, who's played by Paul Bettany. Patrick Ness, the writer of this film, previously wrote A Monster Calls and Chaos Walking. And that's all the information we have so far. We don't know who's going to be directing it. There are no actors attached yet. But man, guys, I just had whiplash reading the story because I was so excited for, a split second seeing that a new Master and Commander movie is in the works. And then I was just that excitement was completely deflated when I learned the circumstances of this sort of remake, reboot thing. I guess it's more of a prequel than a remake. But any thoughts here from either of you? I think all of us like this movie, right? All of us have seen it and talked about it?
I have not seen Master and Commander,
okay.
Despite your raise for it, and despite one of my friends telling me that it's the ultimate guys being dudes movie, and I was like, oh, that sounds great. I should watch it. I still haven't. And it also features my love, Paul Bettany. So I will at some point.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out. It's excellent. So well done. Brad, do you have fond feelings for that first movie?
I haven't seen Master.
Oh my God, what am I doing?
I know.
Maybe it was just Chris and Jacob or something that were on my team there. But
I keep putting it off. I know I need to watch it. I keep hearing how good it is. So
okay, all right. Well, sorry to rope you guys into this conversation when you have zero context for what the hell I'm talking about. But
you might say it's all a wash.
Yes, I love it. The podcast is, this just in, the podcast has been canceled, guys. We're done. So, all right, let's move on to our next item here, which is some pretty immaculate casting for the new John Wick movie. HT, tell us about that.
Yes, so Ip Man himself, Donnie Yen, has joined John Wick 4 in the latest installment of the John Wick franchise. He has been set as a old friend of Keanu Reeves' super assassin John Wick, who shares the same history and many of the same enemies. And other than that, we don't know much about it. But this is, like you said, immaculate casting. Donnie Yen is a martial arts superstar. He was a huge martial art top action star in Hong Kong and China for years before Hollywood took notice, but people in the States probably know him best from Rogue One, from Triple X, Return of Xander Cage, and of course the wildly popular Ip Man movies, which unfortunately have been sort of in diminishing returns, but he is consistently great in it always. So I'm excited to see him and cross fists with Keanu Reeves, although I guess not crossing fists because they're friends, so fighting alongside. And it seems a very fitting piece of casting, too, because the John Wick movies have always been a deliberate homage to Hong Kong action cinema. And here is one of the OG Hong Kong action stars.
Yeah, what do you think about the positioning of Yen as a friend to John Wick instead of a foe? HT, I know that John Wick has sort of faced off against some pretty high profile people from the martial arts world over the years. But what do you think about Donnie Yen as a pal instead?
Well, I'm sure we all want to be friends with Donnie Yen, so I don't mind it. Although I do feel like we missed the opportunity to see Keanu Reeves and Donnie Yen fight, which would be great. That would be so fun to see. But maybe they'll give us a sparring match or something, or some sort of misunderstanding in which they'll fight at first and then realize that they're on the same side after their many years of history together. So I'm just excited to see him in this movie. I think we talked about, or there was rampant fan casting speculation about who the high table in the John Wick universe would be, and that would be populated entirely by big martial arts action stars. I wish for Michelle Yeoh to be in there. Donnie Yen, I think, was one of my wishes. So, if we will into existence, then maybe we'll see one of the other Hong Kong action stars. Maybe we'll see Michelle Yeoh pop up, and that would be great as well.
Man, I would love that. That sounds ideal to me. I'm just gonna put that in my heart and just hope that it actually happens. HC, I love that. All right, let's get to our next story, which involves some sort of disappointing news for Netflix. Brad, tell us about what's going on with Jupiter's Legacy.
It is canceled. The show is done after one season that cost $200 million.
Wow.
This is a pretty big disappointment for Netflix. For those of you that don't know, Jupiter's Legacy is a superhero comic book series from Mark Millar, the creator of Kick-Ass. It's based on a comic book series that he created for his Miller World banner. And it was meant to be this huge multi-season sprawling superhero series that Netflix wanted to basically, be their own Avengers / Watchmen kind of story. And so they spent a lot of money on it, and it ended on a massive cliffhanger. They were hoping to do so much more, but after debuting early in May, just 1 month later, apparently it's not good enough, or maybe too expensive for Netflix to keep doing it, because Mark Millar posted on Twitter earlier this week that they were letting the cast out of their commitments for more episodes. No one used the word canceled when they talked about the show ending, and Millar even specifically said in a statement, quote, "We're confident we'll return to it later." So I don't know if he's just being hopeful, but the interesting thing here is that Mark Millar is still working on a show called Super Crooks, which takes place in the Jupiter's Legacy universe. That's already been given a full season order by Netflix, and it follows a ragtag gang of supervillains, con artists, petty thieves who band together and pull off the heist of the century. Now, what's not clear is if there are characters from Jupiter's Legacy who are meant to appear in this show, if there are other superheroes who are involved. I can't imagine it's the former, because I feel like if they're already letting Jupiter's Legacy kind of fall away, they don't really want Super Crooks to be tied to Jupiter's Legacy. But maybe there's the possibility that they could bring those characters in later if Super Crooks is successful. But yeah, this seems like kind of a mess for Netflix, because I'm sure that they were hoping this could become, this big franchise with crossover potential and everything, but clearly didn't work out that way.
Yeah, man, this just seems like a huge pie in the face kind of moment for a streaming service that really doesn't have too many high profile whiffs like this. It seems rare for Netflix to pull the plug on something after one season. So yeah, what do you think, Brad? Do you think that that people just what do you think it was about this show that people didn't connect with? Did you tune into it at all? And I mean, it seems like it would be up your alley. If anybody on this podcast would have at least tuned into it and checked it out a little bit, it would be you. Did you happen to give this a spin?
I didn't. I thought the premise and the trailer made it look intriguing, but then when the reviews started coming out, it just sounded like it was not good, something that I wasn't going to enjoy. And so I'm always leery about jumping into a show that's intended to last a while and knowing that it's not very good, because if it gets canceled, I'm just going to be disappointed. as I'm sure some people are. What's interesting, though, is that Jupiter's Legacy did have some big ratings when it debuted back in May. So I don't necessarily know if it's just the show ended up being too expensive for Netflix to want to continue it based on the viewership. But it was, successful by pulling in apparently 696 million minutes of viewership, whatever that expands out to. That's how it was described by Nielsen in the ratings. So it was the most watched original episodic program across all of the major streamers for that first week that it debuted in May. So and maybe it just trailed off a lot after that, and no one watched beyond like the first episode, or who knows. But it's gone for now, and maybe it'll come back later at some point.
Yeah, Netflix certainly has that data, even though they won't share it with us. So I'm guessing they made that decision based on the data that they won't let everybody see. But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that they're sort of letting people out of their contracts and stuff. I wonder if that just means that they are letting them out of, the sort of long-term contracts that people sign, for multiple seasons or whatever, but they are going to potentially like loop these people back in for like small cameo roles or something in that other series that you were talking about. So I guess fans of the show, maybe you'll be able to see some of those characters again. But yeah, it seems like a big disappointment as of right now. But let's talk about Marvel for the last two stories on today's show. HT, yesterday, I think this was yesterday, or maybe it was this morning. We wrote about Doctor Strange 2 and an interesting inspiration that the new writer of this upcoming movie sort of took and sort of applied to that character. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's a big feature about Michael Waldron, who is the co-writer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and he's also the head writer for the upcoming Disney Plus series Loki. He talks a little bit about Loki, but he talked quite a bit too about Doctor Strange and the inspirations that went into the characterization of this character and how he made the leap from Loki to Doctor Strange, and some of the influences that he named for his Doctor Strange include Anthony Bourdain and Indiana Jones. He even says at one point that he thinks of Doctor Strange as Indiana Jones in a cloak. So he speaks of Anthony Bourdain first because, quote, Strange is an elitist as a neurosurgeon and a sorcerer. Anthony Bourdain was a man of the people, but there was that intense intellect. He always felt like he could eviscerate anybody with his words at any time, and yet Anthony Bourdain never really punched down. That was the first ingredient in the stew for Doctor Strange. And he also likened Bourdain's reputation for traveling around the world and experiencing many cultures and foods to the plot for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and it's reality hopping. So Anthony Bourdain had been everywhere, seen everything, he said, and that's something that he sort of teases will happen in Multiverse of Madness. But he also talks too about Indiana Jones and how Doctor Strange is a hero who can. Oh no, he says Indiana Jones is a hero who can take a punch, and Stephen Strange is kind of like that too. He's really great at getting beat up. He's very capable and everything. So those are the two big inspirations. He also mentions MASH's Benjamin Franklin Hawkeye Pierce, comparing him to he's got the heart of the character, how doctors do have to be cocky, and he's got the Hawkeye Pierce energy of Strange.
Well, that MASH thing is a reference to something that was before my time. I never really got into MASH, so that one went completely over my head. Drax the Destroyer style. So I want to talk to you about those inspirations, though. HT, do you? How familiar are you with the work of Anthony Bourdain? Did you watch his shows? Did you read any of his books or anything like that when he was still with us and sort of being so prolific on his CNN travel shows and things like that?
Yeah, I watched a couple of his shows. I wasn't a big hardcore follower, but I think I and actually a lot of people in the Vietnamese community really appreciate and respect Anthony Bourdain because he had a big love for the country of Vietnam and its foods in general, and he helped to boost and bolster the reach and renown of the Vietnamese food. So I think I have like an affection for him because of that. It's almost like a cranky uncle that I liked. So I've seen a couple of his shows. My parents all speak highly of him. So yeah, I'm a fan of Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, I loved watching him, and I think this the idea of Stephen Strange being compared to Bourdain is pretty spot on. It strikes me. I mean, Bourdain especially, like as Waldron is talking about here, he really did have like that intense intellect that he mentioned, and you really did feel like this was a guy uh, who knew what he was talking about at all times, and could sort of hold his own in any sort of verbal sparring match or anything like that. And Strange sort of emanates that same kind of intellectual capability, right?
Yeah.
But the Indiana Jones thing is one that I'm not quite sold on. Do you understand the parallel there when he's talking about Stephen Strange being a guy who can take a punch and gets really beat up? Like, I guess it's been a while since I've seen the first Doctor Strange, but that's not exactly how I would describe that character.
Yeah, it's not really either, because it doesn't jibe with the whole elitist vein that we see in Doctor Strange. He doesn't he's kind of a snob in a
Mhm.
way. And I don't think I remember him like getting into bar fights, for example, or he does get into scrabbles, I guess, but like spiritually when he's training to be a sorcerer. So I don't exactly remember him throwing a punch, so to speak. So yeah, that part to me read a little bit strange. Ha.
Yes, we're keeping it going all the way into this story. Brad, I know that you're sort of more into the Marvel world than either me or HT. Do you have a different characterization of Doctor Strange in your mind? Do you understand that comparison to Indiana Jones a little clearer?
I mean, if there's a comparison there, I think maybe he's alluding to like his Strange's ability to like take a punch during the finale of the first Doctor Strange, where he keeps putting himself in harm's way with Dormammu where he keeps getting killed over and over again by keeping
Mm.
Dormammu trapped in an infinite loop, in order to defeat him. So
Yeah, I guess that's
that
true.
could be part of it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I forgot about that. I didn't really think about it in that context, but that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I love that part because it's basically him annoying him into losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't really think about it in terms of like him, like taking his licks to achieve that annoyance. But yeah, I guess I understand that now. All right, so our last story involves Loki, which is another project that Michael Waldron is working on. Loki debuts on Disney Plus next week, and Waldron in that same interview was talking about the inspirations for that show. And he listed several of them. So one of them is Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds, not necessarily because of like the setting or anything, but because he was sort of looking at Tarantino movies and specifically cited Inglourious Basterds because he's looking for inspiration for things that luxuriate in long scenes of dialogue and tension building. That was his quote. And I think Inglourious Basterds is a terrific example of that. Long scenes of dialogue and tension building is not necessarily something that we've seen thus far in the MCU shows in WandaVision or The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I'm excited to see what that actually translates into, in this new series. He also pointed out Catch Me If You Can, the Spielberg movie, and Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise, which that one is the most surprising one to me because Loki does not necessarily strike me as an Ethan Hawke-esque romantic character, and he has not really had any question mark romantic relationships on screen in the MCU thus far. I don't think he has. So yeah, I wonder if we're gonna see Loki get involved in some sort of romance over the course of this series.
Oh, if he gets a romance, the fangirls will go crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of like metatextual stuff going on with that Loki character. He's very complex, has very entrenched fandom for sure. So yeah, I'm curious to see, if they sort of take a swing like that with that character, how the larger public is going to react to something like that. The Catch Me If You Can thing though makes a little bit more sense to me because it seems like Owen Wilson's character, I think his name is Mr. Mobius, is this guy who works for the Time Variance Authority, which is this big organization that sort of controls or tries to keep all of the timelines in line and everything. He seems to be this guy who is like either after Loki or trying to keep Loki in line as Loki sort of like zips around in all these different timelines and makes all these waves throughout time. So the idea of a sort of mentor relationship akin to the one that DiCaprio and Tom Hanks's characters had in Catch Me If You Can makes sense. So yeah, I mean, nothing super specific in terms of like what exactly we can expect to see. But a couple of touch point films there that I'm excited to see. Blade Runner is another one. Not entirely certain how that show is going to work in here, but yeah, I just wanted to open the floor to you guys and see if you had any thoughts on this, any reactions, if any of these movies that were mentioned here make you more or less excited about watching Loki. Either of you?
Yeah, I'm most curious about this Before Sunrise deal because that's one of my favorite movies, and I don't really know how it will play into the Marvel Loki formula. I'm very confused by it mostly. I'm just like, how is this going to happen? I guess what we've known so far about the show is that each episode will be set in a different timeline and will apply a different genre to it, hence the Blade Runner 2049, which I could definitely see him landing in some sort of neo-futuristic cyberpunk type of timeline. So that one I could see. Before Sunrise, I'm very intrigued for sure, and mostly confused. But yeah, I'm quite excited for Loki. I think it'll be something that we haven't seen before with Marvel, at least.
Brad, any thoughts?
I'm particularly excited about the Catch Me If You Can vibe. I love Catch Me If You Can. It's one of my favorite Spielberg movies, and I think the idea of having Loki kind of be this Frank Abagnale person who's fitting in all these different personalities and jobs and different scenes and stuff like that has the potential to be a lot of fun for Tom Hiddleston.
Yes, so I think we're going to be doing a deep dive episode next week for the Loki premiere, like we've done for WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier in the past. So
me and Peter are going to be doing the usual recaps and digging deep into each new episode.
Awesome. All right, cool. So yes, I look forward to listening to that, and hopefully our listeners do as well. And I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily. You can find more about all of these stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked inside the show notes. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. Speaking of features, Chris has a great one up about how romance is the secret weapon of the Conjuring franchise. The new Conjuring movie is out in theaters and on HBO Max today. So if you want to check out that piece, I would encourage you to do so. I'll link that in the show notes too. You can subscribe to this show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.